Maybe don't know.
At the elite level, climbing is really strength based, but in the beginning stage and the middle stage and even the high level stage, like it's a lot of skill acquisition.
This time power. This time to build power. This time to build power. This time to build power.
What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Chris Hampton. Welcome to the Power Company Podcast, brought to you by PowerCompanyClimbing.com. Today is a rewind back to our 30th episode from March of 2017 with Jonathan Siegrist. And we chose this episode to air today because on May 18th, well, actually, I found the reason for this one really fascinating, and I wanted to know if Jonathan even knew this fact about himself that I had stumbled across. So I called him up in Catalunya, Spain, where he's in the midst of a mega project.
Starting to feel the stress, the time pressure, all that. So
yeah,
it's all, yeah.
That's what you live for, though,
part. Right? I guess so.
Well, man, I won't keep you long on here. This is just meant to be a super quick lead in to a rewind episode, because while you and I have talked quite a bit over the years, we haven't recorded for a long time.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Like you were one of my early episodes I think we recorded at Nathan Welton's house in Estes Park.
Holy shoot.
Eons
You're
ago.
right, dude. You're right. Wow, that was a long time ago. So wait, what number episode was that, and where are you at now?
You know what? I don't remember, but it was probably like around episode 30, and we're closing in on 300 now. So,
oh my God! Wow.
So it was a long time ago.
Even worse.
So we need to do another one, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, that'd be great. Anytime. Yeah.
But I'm rewinding to that episode. I'm going to repost it because I think the things we talked about in that episode are still so valuable today. And what we talked about was like rethinking your preparation for projects, even though you haven't like plateaued or gotten stuck somewhere. It's like, let's tweak and let's interrogate and let's rethink it a little bit and continue trying to progress. And having watched your career over the last, whatever it's been, 5 years since then or something, maybe more at this point. I don't know. I lose track of time, but yeah, you've consistently progressed. So I think that message that we got across in that was really cool. And I want to put it out for the new listeners who haven't maybe gone way back in the catalog yet.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Right on. Nice.
Do you have any idea? We're going to post it on May 18th. Do you have any idea why?
On May 18th? No,
okay.
I don't.
Well, here's why. I was looking for like, when did Jonathan do something cool that we could release this, in like conjunction with that date. And I started looking at your 8A, and I don't know if you log things the day you do them or if you like just log them when you get around to it.
It depends on how long ago it was. I was like hyper accurate with that stuff more recently. Little like if you go too far back, I was just taking guesses because I didn't start on 8A for a handful of years. But anyways, what is it? Is it the day I did Jumbo?
Well, so out of your 4 9Bs,
okay,
2 of them were logged on May 18th in 2021 and 2022.
That's crazy.
And Jumbo Love was logged on May 17th of 2018.
Whoa, that's good.
And your 4th one was also in May, but on Star Wars Day, May the 4th. So
that's awesome. I don't think I knew that. That's a great fact. That they're the 3 all within a day. That's insane. Yeah. And then the fact that they're all in May is definitely, what I've always thought actually would be very interesting, because a lot of my years are kind of on a similar trajectory. I would love to see like the year and performance, like charted over the months, because I do tend to kind of follow roughly the same Like normally I'm training in the winter. Normally I have a spring trip to Europe. Normally I'm like hot and bothered all summer long. And then, normally I have like something early fall that gets me motivated as well. So that is really cool, dude. May is my month. Well, that's really sweet to hear because I'm going to Sayus this May.
Oh, sick.
I don't know.
Don't be superstitious about it though. Don't let it be like, oh fuck, it's April. I can't send yet.
Yeah. No. I'm gonna say an extended spring is my time. With May 17th or 18th being like the center point. So I get 2 months plus or minus.
I like it. That's the best way to look at it.
Yeah.
I was talking to Blake just yesterday and I mentioned to him this like May 17th and 18th phenomenon. And he's like, oh God, you're gonna give him anxiety now.
No, I definitely have stress about sending and performance and stuff like that. But thankfully I'm not too psychotic of a, I don't have a ton of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Superstitions.
Yeah. I don't have a ton of superstitions.
Like you don't wear the same underwear the whole time in Europe.
Well, hold on. That's not a superstition.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Well, man, that's that. I just wanted to see if you knew that because when I started looking, I thought it was
that's pretty
just
crazy.
A really fantastic coincidence that you're like at peak performance mid-May, multiple years.
That's exciting to hear because, May is still a little bit away. So that means I can just keep getting better, hopefully.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Well, awesome, man, I appreciate you taking the time out while you're over there and good luck with the giant rig that you're trying. Man. It looks massive and complicated. So I can't wait to hear more about it.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. I'm happy to chat again with you guys anytime. And thanks for the opportunity and the support.
Yeah, let's do it again. Next time we're in the same place, same time. Let's record again.
Yeah, sounds sick, dude.
All right, man. Have fun.
Thanks, Chris.
Squeeze Drew for me.
I will. Take care, man.
See you, man. By the time you get this, it's entirely possible that he's already broken this streak. But for now, on what might just be his unicorn day, May 18th, we are rewinding to this timeless conversation with one of America's best sport climbers, and frankly, just one of the best humans out there. Let's get into it.
It's time to build.
You were climbing at a really high level to begin with, like before you ever really started focusing on structured training or anything like that. And you had kind of, if I understand correctly, and stop me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you had kind of followed the same way of doing things for a lot of years.
Yeah, definitely.
And that got you to a really high level. You were climbing 14D, just doing what you'd been doing. So what I'm interested in is what causes you, or what allows your ego to be like, okay, we need to change things up.
Well, I think that's a challenge that a lot of people are going to have to face, because the more I hear people talk about training and I hear people talk about changing their climbing, I think people are just so obsessed with volume. And that was like the biggest thing for me is all of my training up until that point had been like volume based.
Right.
So, and in the gym, I would do the same thing. And then I was running a lot, which is something that I was really motivated by. And I also was convinced, despite hearing from so many people, that running was going to help my climbing.
And you were going pretty hard running.
Yeah, for sure. No, especially like the summer I lived in Lander. I'd run in the winds like 3 or 4 times a week, and it'd be like at least 10 miles, sometimes 15.
That sounds heinous to me.
I mean, yeah. I honestly, I really miss it a lot, but yeah, I heard enough people that suggested I change the way I kind of approach my climbing and my training, and it was really hard because like you said, I mean, I was coming from a place of like, well, this is working for me, you know? I mean, I've gotten to where I am. At that point, I had kind of plateaued for like probably 3.5 years or something.
Okay.
I climbed my first 14D in 2010, and that was like a pretty big breakthrough for me in the fall of 2010. And then I probably didn't climb anything harder than that for up until early 2014. So
right. So you were ready for a change.
yeah, I was ready for a change, and also I really wanted to like have another breakthrough in my climbing, and yeah, like I said, I definitely had to make myself vulnerable in the sense that I was like, this works, you know. It's really hard to like let go of these patterns that we create,
For sure.
and to be like, and to hear, you know, someone tell you that kind of everything you're doing is wrong, and you know, certainly not everything. Obviously it
Right.
worked for
It got you there.
yeah, but I kind of it felt like a risk for sure. And when I first spoke with Mark Anderson, he just again and again and again tried to assure me that it would work and that it wasn't a risk, and
Right.
but regardless, it felt that way. And for the first month or month and a half of kind of changing things, I was really skeptical,
Yeah.
you know, and really like,
Yeah. After
"Ugh."
every session, you're like, this shit isn't working.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just hard because I was under the impression, I think a lot of people are too still, that you just, you know, if you're not leaving the gym completely exhausted or leaving the crag completely exhausted, that you're not, you know, you're not seeing any benefit.
Right. You're not
from
getting
it.
a workout.
And that, and certainly for the first little while, I was, you know, a lot of days I'd leave the gym and be like, I could go for another, you know, 6 hours or something, you know, but I guess I'll just stop now. And, you know, I'd love, rest day comes around. Oh, I'd love to do a 16-mile run with my dog,
Yeah.
but instead I'm going to sit here, you know, and that was really hard for me.
Yeah, I bet that was tough for you because I remember having Thanksgiving dinner with you at Miguel's years ago. And,
Okay, yeah.
and you and Angie Payne were having this conversation about rest days.
Yeah.
And at the time, you hadn't taken more than like 2 rest days in a row or 2 or 3 rest days in a row in years and years.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, I think it was based on a couple different things. One was that, yeah, I was like obsessed and I really felt like the volume was helping me. And second, it was also like, I do think that especially early on in your climbing, I started climbing when I was 18. So, I mean, for the first, you know, 6, 7, even 8 years, it's true that if I took a week off, like I would climb differently. And
Sure.
I think that for most people, that's true, you know, and now it's different. I've been climbing for 12 years and I feel like I could take, you know, 3 days off is like not a problem at all. Like it's only helpful. A week off, maybe there's like one day where I feel a little like awkward,
Like you have to
and
get
then
back
it's like
into it.
totally back
Yeah.
to normal, which is something that you kind of have to earn, you know? And so it was partly driven by that like authentic feeling of being like, oh, I don't climb as well as I did a week ago or whatever. But also it was just me, I had this strong impression that, you know, climbing was an endurance activity and I should just climb until I was exhausted or run until I was exhausted every day.
Right. And during the initial years of your climbing, that volume is probably the right thing to do.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know,
and a lot of
you're
people,
learning a lot.
Totally. And I think it's like just getting the hours of experience under your belt. You know, at the elite level, climbing is really strength based, but in the beginning stage and the middle stage and even the high level stage, like it's a lot of skill acquisition. And I think, you know, a mistake that a lot of people make nowadays is, I mean, I've had people come to strength training seminars I've given or ask me directly, you know, oh, I'm a 10D climber. I really want to break into 11A. Like, can you suggest some hangboard routines for me? And I'm
Right.
like, no.
Go rock climbing.
Go rock climbing.
Yeah.
Go climbing as much as you can. And I, you know, I asked them a little more about like, are you challenging yourself when you're in the gym? You know, how many days a week are you going climbing? And when I hear, oh, not really, I kind of just play around in the gym and I climb 1 day a week, I'm like, that's the reason why you're not improving. It's not because you need to, buy some book or like
Yep.
change your diet or anything. Like, no, I'm a pretty strong believer that you should just climb and try and challenge yourself and climb on different rock types and go outside as much as you can until you're even a mid 513 level climber, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would say I would agree with that to a point. I think different people plateau in different places, you know, and then they need to change things up. But definitely the majority of what we do here is, you know, just structuring people's sessions so that they're not just going into the gym and playing around. You know,
Yeah,
it's
totally.
90% rock climbing.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah. And I think that that's great. And I do think that, like we've just talked, I mean, you don't have to be training to improve at your climbing, you know? I mean, when you're really nearing your personal capabilities, I do think that you have to eliminate all variables possible and train in a really, really smart way if you want to improve, period. But for many, many years, I think it really benefits people, like you said, just to have structure, just to go into the gym and kind of know a little bit what they're doing. And it can still just be a fun climbing day with all your friends.
For sure.
But you know, there's so many different ways you can go into the gym and just climb routes or go bouldering for 3 hours. And one way will benefit you a lot better than the other way.
Yeah. And I've heard for years about people saying, oh, I don't want to train. You know, I climb because I love climbing. I don't want to go train.
Yeah.
But if training can be a really structured, fun session.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
lifting weights or hangboarding or doing pull-ups or whatever. The majority of people are going to get more out of just climbing and trying interesting, fun things instead of just doing the same old thing every time.
Totally. Yeah.
So I'm curious, when Mark was first talking to you, first off, did you approach Mark or did he approach you and say, here's something you could change in your climbing?
It was a little bit of both. So I was at the time, it was 2013, and during the whole summer I lived in Lander, which was awesome, and I dearly missed that place. But I was climbing a lot with BJ and with yourself and anyone that was around, the whole 307 crew.
Yep.
And I had a good summer. I climbed a lot of great stuff. I was doing a lot of bolting at Wolf Point at the time. And I ran into Mike Anderson one day when I was climbing at the Erratic. I was trying Moonshine, and Mike was there, and he was trying Ghost Moon or something. I can't remember exactly what it was, but he was totally kicking ass. And I had in the back of my head that I wanted to go to France the next year, and I really wanted to go to Seiyus, and I wanted to try hard and all these things. And I knew that I was going to have a structured training period during the winter. And basically, Mike happened to be there. He took some pictures of me on Moonshine, and he published them in the book. And he also asked me, you know, hey, me and my brother and I are writing this book, and we'd love it if you could take a look at it and maybe, you know, give us your 2 cents for the back page or whatever.
Yep. Cool.
And so he sent me a digital copy of the book, and it was like, I read one chapter and I was like, I called both of them immediately, and I was like, I want you to train me, basically.
Cool.
Because it was what I needed. It was like scientific, and it was like more like engineering or something, and less like kind of I like
your
the
way.
yeah. And for me, like as a like my character, I needed that to feel like I could kind of give up everything I had done. I wanted something that felt like it was proven, you know, and it felt like really well structured, and
less risk.
Exactly.
That's what you were looking for.
Exactly. Yeah. And so then, you know, I basically said, you know, here's your quote for the back of the book. And by the way, you know, could I pay you guys or whatever to help me this winter? And Mark was really gracious and basically just like generous, and just was like, come out to my place on, you know, whenever you can, and I'll take you through a couple sessions, and, you know, I'll kind of help you along and whatever. And pretty much since then, I still write both of those guys when I have questions. Over the years, I've really tailored. I've kind of taken, I'd say like what I do is 70 to 80% of like the Rock Prodigy system. And I've changed the last 20 or 30% to kind of accommodate what I feel works best for me personally. But I mean, I still think that by all means, those guys are like legends when it comes to training. And I think that
for sure.
They helped me immensely. If for nothing else than just to be like, hey, you should try this, you know, and having it come from two dudes who I knew only had a few free hours a week to try.
So you didn't have to be convinced necessarily. It was, you had already internalized the idea that you needed to do something a little different.
Yeah, I knew that I wanted to do something different. And I think I had a few ideas of what I would, because the whole time up until then, I never had a coach. I never had any kind of, I mean, I had taken tidbits from here and there, but I never was on a climbing team. I never competed. I never had any direction from anyone else. It was just like me kind of figuring things out, totally trial and error by myself. And I think basically I had come to terms with the fact that if I wanted to break through and if I wanted to change my climbing, that I needed help. And I didn't know exactly how that would come. But that was just like the idea floating around in my head. And then kind of that day at the erratic and then later seeing this text was like, oh, this is clearly it. You know, I'll try this, you know, and I didn't know if that would work or not, but I was like, well, I got to try something, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And I know you eventually, I don't know if it happened right away, but you eventually started bouldering more. And you didn't consider yourself a good boulder at that point. And, you know, definitely people can look at it and go, what the hell is he talking about? He doesn't consider himself a good boulder, you know, because you're doing V12s pretty fast right off the bat. But for you, you know, when compared to what you're doing on routes, V12 wasn't what you wanted to be at.
Yeah. And actually up until, so last summer was the first time I started doing more bouldering definitely in the gym. And because in the end, kind of what I discovered was that through all the years, I mean, before I started climbing, I was racing mountain bikes. So I had a really strong foundation in like cardiovascular fitness. And I knew how to train volume really well, intervals, all that kind of stuff. So when I came into climbing, I totally just applied that same, I was like, oh, climbing is, you know, I'm thinking like, oh, I'm getting pumped and I'm breathing hard. It must be an endurance activity. So I pretty much applied all the things that I had learned from mountain biking and training in that sense and into climbing, which like we established worked really well for me for many years. The thing that really changed for me was, and I think having a third party, which is why having a trainer, having a coach is so important, is to have someone other than yourself telling you what you're good and what you're bad at. Because it's really easy for me to say, I'm good at this, I'm bad at this, and most of the time I'm wrong. Yeah,
we always think we're better at something or think we're worse at something.
Totally.
Than we actually are.
And so that was really beneficial to have Mike and Mark. I mean, they went to the extent of like watching all the videos I had been in. They came and climbed with me and when, you know, watched me during training sessions, and they were like, okay, here's what you suck at, here's what you're good at. And they were like, you know, you're exceptionally good at this and you're pretty bad actually at this. And I knew that already, you know, but it was kind of like, oh man, you know, like hearing it from somebody. But that's what I needed, you know? And basically what we came up with is that my power, which still to this day is really lacking. And the net result was like, don't ever train stamina again, basically. You know, I had been doing like tread wall sessions, like going to the gym, doing 25 laps or whatever every day. And it was basically like, just don't do that.
Yeah. That stuff comes back so fast.
Yeah. And that was the scariest thing for me. Like talking about vulnerability and whatever, it was just completely letting go of that. And I will say right now that since the winter between 2013 and 2014, I have never, what I would personally consider, I've never trained stamina or endurance since then. The only thing I've trained is strength and power. And the stamina, I mean, yeah, I get pumped sometimes. And last summer I took 5 weeks and didn't tie in once and only bouldered. And when I came back to climbing routes, I was like depressed for 2 weeks because I was like, this is the only thing I'm good at. And now I'm bad at it. But it came back around, you know, and it was okay. And for me personally, that was really what I needed. And so, yes, to answer your question, like from minutes ago, bouldering became mostly indoors, but bouldering became a huge element of my training. Definitely.
Yeah. I'm kind of in the same boat. Albeit at a much lower level than you. I got to 13C by training only endurance and stamina.
Yeah.
And then I made the mistake of going, okay, I need to start bouldering. And what I would do is I would go into the gym and do these long boulder problems that resembled routes more than they resembled boulders, and I'm like, I'm not getting any stronger, but it was my own mistake.
Yeah.
Did you tend toward that at first, or did Mike and Mark, or did you yourself just force the idea of doing short, hard moves, little short sequences? How did you go into bouldering initially?
Yeah. I mean, I think what I tended towards less than doing longer boulder problems was, again, doing volume with bouldering.
Oh, yeah.
So
okay.
I would go into
Lots
the gym and do a
problems.
lot of problems. Like for me, maybe, I would have a circuit of, V8s and 9s or something and do like 10 of them.
Right.
Which is not at all what I needed. What I needed was to go in and try something at my limit for an hour and then quit.
Yeah,
which
sure.
That was another really hard.
It's really hard for people to learn in general.
Totally.
That's a really tough thing to connect with, is failing on a move or two over and over and over, and then just quitting before you've run yourself into the ground.
Totally. But I mean, it brings up, in my opinion, one of the golden rules about training is, if it's not like hard and to some degree uncomfortable, it's not going to create any growth. And I think that goes for all things in life in general. I mean, emotional, certainly physical, mental, whatever, and that was me just kind of like, oh yeah, I'm bouldering now, I'm training, but I also kind of like found my comfort zone. You know what I mean? So I think inevitably, I think that the message came full circle for me last summer when I was living in Estes, and I decided, I actually came to climb a route on the Diamond that I was really motivated on, but it ended up being too wet. And so I decided, well, I have a month of time here, a little more, so I guess I'll try this bouldering thing. And it was like the second or third day I'd ever been to Chaos. Right. I didn't tie in or do anything but climb in upper and lower Chaos, and then for a little over a month. And that's when the message came full circle, because I set a goal for myself, and I started trying boulders that were really hard, or hard for me, and then it was like, oh, I kind of learned like, okay, try once, rest 10 minutes, try again. Maybe I only try this boulder 6 times, 7 times,
right,
and then I hike out. And that was how I started to like finish boulders, as opposed to, and furthermore, I set a goal that was like partially numerical, well, totally numerical. Like I wanted to climb a certain number of a certain grade. And in order to do that, it was like, damn, dude, I can't, I could have easily done 3 times as many V10s, but what I really wanted to do was climb routes or boulders that were really hard for me. So that kind of, and I'm super goal oriented, like maybe even to a fault, where I kind of can't let go. Like once I emotionally commit to something, it's really hard for me to let go of it.
Yep.
And I think that was the kind of kick in the ass I needed to be like, oh, and kind of really come full circle and really understand the whole power thing, understand the whole like limit bouldering thing. And
now, did you watch other boulders, how they structure their sessions up there?
Totally.
And kind of steal from what they were doing?
Totally, yeah. I can remember one day I was bouldering with Nick Duddle, who's an outstanding boulder, and in between tries, he would like lay down.
Yeah.
Like lay on the ground and do nothing for 6 minutes or whatever. And I was like, that's pretty sick. And especially coming from a route climbing background, where it's like you're either belaying or climbing all day, basically. Maybe you take a break for 45 minutes to eat lunch, but it's like there's always action. Like if you're not climbing, it's because you're belaying your buddy. And then when it's your turn, you're going to muerte, or you're hang dogging on the route forever. So there's kind of like, if you want to boulder really well, I mean, yeah, it's you can't take the same attitude towards it. You really have to be like, okay, I'm going to give full effort and then chill. And then give full effort and then chill. And I really learned this really well on the Automator, which was the first V13 I ever did, I learned after the first day of trying that if I went too like aggressive at the boulder, it's like, for people that don't know, it's like probably like V10-ish to a really hard move right at the finish. And it's a little bit longer, maybe like 10 or 15, 10, 12 moves or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, I learned pretty quickly, like, okay, I can give one really good try. If I rest 10 minutes, I can give another really good try. But I could feel like if I only rested 4 minutes, the try was so much worse. If I only rested 8 minutes, it was, and I kind of just like found that sweet spot. And thankfully I found it pretty early on in my like quest to do these boulders. And so then I just applied that same mentality to all the other boulders I did. And it worked really well.
Yeah, that's really important. I think that people often make the mistake of looking at the grades that everyone else is climbing and not paying attention to the way they structure their day or just the mindset they take into it. Chances are when you were going out climbing with Nick, he was probably climbing boulders at a higher level than you were at the time.
Yeah.
So instead of you just throwing yourself at the same problems, you took what he was doing to approach that problem and applied it to your own climbing.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I've never been the best at anything. And so it's always really helpful to, I'm not going to pretend like I know how to do things better than anyone for that matter.
That's what makes you good at things, is because you're able to watch, take a back seat, and then apply that to your own climbing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I mean, especially, the one thing that I'm kind of like excited about right now is like all these different, like the interdisciplinary climbing thing, I'm a little more excited on just bouldering now than I was before, but largely I've done that to improve my route climbing. But I think like all the different disciplines of climbing all lend such an incredible insight to the other disciplines of climbing, et cetera, et cetera. And so I guess in that sense, it's like, yeah, damn right. When I go to Spain and I climb with Chris Sharma, I'm like, dude, like the dawn of American sport climbing.
Yeah.
I'm like gonna watch what guy does.
Yep.
When I go out bouldering and, I'm like looking around the corner and I see Daniel or Ty Landeman or like, many of the other like exquisite boulders that live in and around Colorado. I'm like, dude, what's Homeboy doing over there? Because he, like those bros and girls for that matter, plenty of girls in this state. I'm like, what, I want to learn. And likewise, when I go climb on a wall with Tommy, it's like, I'm never trying to give Tommy any tips on how to rock climb. I'm just like taking back seat, man. Like, okay, this is how you build an anchor. Okay, here's how you go to the death.
Yeah, but on the flip side, I'm sure there are times where you're like, he's treating you like a peer as well. Like, what do you think about this beta? Or, what works here? What do you think about this?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, a great example is like in 2012, I went with Tommy to Yosemite for 6 weeks to try the Dawn Wall. And that was like, by all means, he was the teacher and I was the student, and I was just like trying hard to keep up, the whole time. And I learned immensely from that. And it was so sick. And then in the spring of 2014, we lived together in Sayus for several weeks. And he ended up climbing 14C, which he hadn't done in like a decade, which was so sick,
right.
And at the time I was trying biography, and it was awesome to have that same exchange in like a little bit in the other way, and he'd be like at the end of the day, he'd be like, man, I think it's going to rain on Sunday. Do you think I should try tomorrow, or should I rest 2 days? Or I'm kind of tired. How many tries did you, whatever. And it was like, oh, cool. We can all just like kind of powwow together and all just like grow as climbers.
And I think climbing's a selfish sport. I mean, it just really is. You're out there chasing your own goals all the time. And it's really easy to get caught in that and not pay attention to what everyone else is doing. And I feel really fortunate to have gotten to climb around guys like you and BJ and Daniel and I get to climb around some big names, and I use that time to learn,
Yeah.
I mean, and there are specific examples. I remember watching you go up a project in the red, and your first time up it, you just went up with a stick clip. Like there was no charade of I'm just going to do all the moves first try. You're like, I'm going to go up, I'm going to identify holds, I'm going to make this easy on myself.
Yeah.
Do it efficiently.
Yeah.
And that was a light bulb moment for me. Like, wow, you can, if I'm approaching something really hard, I don't have to just bang my head against it and fall 40 times at the same move. I can just go up, identify what's going on, and then start trying the pieces. And that was huge for me. And I watch it with BJ. I learn a ton from him just about the mindful approach to climbing. And he accepts my beta, which I think is cool. While he was working on this mutation project, he changed some of his beta based on my beta for the individual pieces.
Yeah.
Things he had climbed, hundreds of times.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, maybe that footwork's better. Let me try it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes good climbers good, is they're willing to take the back seat and accept learning. It's not, it's a selfish thing to them for sure, but they're able to open up and include other people's thoughts into that. So, and I think that's probably the important part of what you did when you shifted to let Mark and Mike kind of take over and tell me what to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's pretty cool. Have there been moments where what you were doing didn't work? Or you got frustrated with what was going on?
For the first year, it was just like a straight upward progression, and it was awesome. And I built so much motivation to train, and I mean, I would feel like stronger every week. It was awesome. And
which is cool, but kind of sets you up for disappointment the next time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why is because they helped me really pinpoint some of my weakness, and I worked hard on those things. But no matter how good a tool is, it can only work for a certain amount of time, and it can only help you improve to a certain extent. And I think I found a great tool by working with them and by following the program for the most part. And then kind of this spring, and a little bit also last year, I just saw, again, using mostly the same tool. I had adjusted things a little bit, but I just saw it wasn't as beneficial as it was before, which makes total sense.
Yeah.
And I came to basically a realization, especially this spring, I felt as though I'd basically exhausted the capabilities of, at least for the meantime, of this tool. And I wanted to try something different. And I think both mentally and physically, I had spent like 2 years roughly. If I wasn't training my ass off, I was pretty much like at the crag
climbing full time,
trying to ascend near my limit, and that kind of wore out on me a little bit. I think I took like an 8-day break in 2014 and last year, but otherwise I was either training or climbing like every day other than an occasional rest day. So
that's tough on a lot of levels. That's tough emotionally, because I know you're the type of guy who gets emotionally invested in what you're doing. And that's really hard to do.
Yeah. So, and I think it all came to a head this spring. I trained really hard before I went to try Jumbo Love, and I think I overtrained a little bit. I wouldn't say that I developed any injuries, but I definitely, like, parts of my body weren't working as well as they once had.
Right.
And then trying the hardest route of my life, and then, to further, to put a little more heat under my ass, there was some kind of emotional things going on in my life personally as well. So it was just like kind of right before I left for Switzerland in early May, I just kind of came to the realization of like, okay, I'm going to try something different for a little while. And that's what this is all about, right?
Yeah, for
it's
sure.
Like you kind of come to the end of the road And you have to have the foresight to say, I'm going to try something a little bit different.
Yep.
Even though it feels risky, even though I know that I could do a month-long hangboarding session and my fingers would feel incredible by the end. They might not be any stronger than before, but they would feel my strongest again and whatever. I know I could follow the same whatever path. I think for me, I needed something different, and I kind of gave up on the training, went to Switzerland, and that was the perfect opportunity for me to kind of just play and climb. And I was, by all means, I was hustling and I was trying to climb hard and whatever, but I had a lot of rainy days and a lot of time spent alone and stuff, which was like kind of exactly what I feel like I needed. And when I got back, I felt super refreshed and a lot more motivated for my fall goals. And for the rest of the year, I'm kind of trying to not train indoors systematically like I have the last couple of years. I really want to see, take a page from Ethan Pringle or from Chris Sharma, two guys who are huge inspirations for me, neither of which have really ever done systematic training at all.
Right.
And see if I can, do this interdisciplinary thing and see where that can take me.
Yeah, and I think that's what they do that makes it work.
Yeah.
Is they can switch back and forth between bouldering, sport climbing, going to do bigger stuff, doing shorter, harder stuff, whatever. They switch back and forth often enough and are trying hard enough at all of those disciplines that it works for them.
Yeah. And that's the main takeaway, your last sentence there. Because I was always like, man, Chris Sharma is just like a genetic god, and it's like so unfair how good he is at climbing, and he never has to train or whatever. And then you go to the crag and you climb with him, and he has this like incredible balance between like being so tranquilo and also, when he tries, he erupts with energy,
Right.
And that's exactly what you need if you're not going to go in the gym, because that's the same attitude I would bring into my training sessions, where I'd be like, during my 3-minute rest or whatever, I was like, bring my whole psych level down, way down, no like overstoker, like listen to my music, sit down, relax, prepare, and then go to the death when I was like hanging or lifting weights or whatever it was. And then again, come back down. And Chris like exemplifies that. I can totally understand how he's been climbing his whole life, never really trained, and has gotten to where he is now, because when he pulls onto the rock and tries, he might only try a couple times a day, but he's going to the death, and not that many people can say that about their efforts outside
for sure.
Or whatever.
And that's something I think you can work on.
Totally.
There's a lot more to progressing in this sport than just hangboarding or lifting weights or whatever. There's a huge mental, emotional, psychological component that I think those guys are really good at.
Totally.
And you can, Ethan just was very open about his struggles in the emotional end of climbing. And I think the fact that he struggles with that stuff is part of what makes him so good. Because he can be tapped into his emotions and can do exactly what you just said. He can go out not having, climbed on something long and hard for a while and just be so emotionally invested in it that he can perform really well on it right off the bat.
Totally. Yeah. And I have a kind of one of the main things that I struggle with is this sense of like earning everything. And it's really hard for me to allow myself to accept success if I don't feel like I've prepared for it. And that doesn't necessarily mean that I have to be in the gym for 3 months before I try any project, but if I flew to Spain tomorrow, like randomly, someone was like, "Oh, here's a ticket to Spain, go for a month." I know like physically there's no reason why I couldn't perform, but mentally I'd be like, "Oh, I was not ready. I was not prepared for this. I'm not like emotionally and mentally prepared to try my hardest." And I don't feel like I've kind of, walked the path towards success so I don't deserve it basically. And it would probably be enough to prevent me from succeeding. And that's like one of the biggest things for me because it's so strongly ingrained in myself. And I think that's, again, like to bring it back to what we were speaking about before. I think that's part of the reason why it was so hard for me to let go of my like tendencies towards volume and towards like all this junk training and like kind of going overboard, because to me it was like, oh dude, I went in the gym so hard the last month. Like I'm ready to prepare. And I could like look back in the moment of, standing beneath the project. I could look back to the month I had just spent like getting so pumped. I wanted to barf in the gym every day and be like, okay, I deserve it, And so that's one of the hardest things like emotionally that I have to like try and overcome.
And I think we often mistake what going hard means. Yeah. I think we always equate it with, like you just said, that you have to puke after your session or you feel totally worked. But going hard can just as well be what you were talking about with Nick Duddle, or with Chris Sharma, where he only ties in twice, but he goes a muerte those attempts. And I think it's hard. It is going hard to be able to bring yourself down, rest, and wait for that next attempt. I think that's going just as hard as wrecking yourself. But it's a different kind of hard. It's not as physically hard for as long. It's more mentally, emotionally, psychologically difficult.
Totally.
So are you bouldering now? You were up in Lower Chaos yesterday. So
do you have
bouldering goals?
I do. Yeah. I saw so much benefit last year after bouldering, just in like being snappy and being powerful. And I think I maintained my finger strength really well. I don't know. I don't think it made my fingers stronger than I would have in a training session, but I think it like kept me near a level that I wanted to be at. So I am really ambitious to do another bouldering cycle here, probably because I think it will improve, chances of me climbing well in the fall, but also I think because I just like it now and it's fun. And there's like really cool boulders that I want to try.
And having that snappy feeling, I mean, that's a good feeling to have.
For sure.
When you climb and you can explode like that.
Totally.
It's such a cool feeling.
Totally. And that's what I'm principally lacking. And so it just feels cool. I feel like a hero when I'm like, yeah, I can jump. I can like grab that hold fast, it's like fun. But for the meantime, I'm really motivated by this route I'm trying on the diamond. I've been trying now for a couple weeks. Initially it was mostly trying like as a rope solo and just like kind of like logistically and like physically preparing, like acclimatizing and stuff. And now I'm trying on the sharp end. I just have tried once from the ground. And I'll try again tomorrow actually. So that's my main kind of motivation for now. And if I can hopefully get through that, then there's a few more trad routes I want to do and also kind of mixing some bouldering between now and like the middle or the end of September.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'm glad you're going that route instead of, constantly pushing against the ceiling of grades. Yeah. I think it's really important, like we just talked about with Chris and Ethan, to step back and like you're calling it an interdisciplinary approach to climbing. I think that's probably the way forward for so many people, starting even at the bottom levels, you know, all the way up to the top levels.
Totally.
Because you're going to avoid burnout.
Totally.
When you're doing different moves and grabbing different holds, you're going to avoid injury. Just a really cool way to approach it. And when we were up at Lower Chaos yesterday and I heard you say, I'm going to bed at 8 tomorrow night because I'm climbing on the diamond on Sunday.
Yeah.
I just think that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
I really think loving all the disciplines is the way to go and the way to becoming a better climber.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think, like you said, more than anything, it's all rock climbing, right? But I mean, man, the difference between a day in rifle, a day on the diamond, and a day in Lower Chaos is immense.
Yeah,
and
it's huge.
Both like physically, mentally, like, the way you interact with your partners, like socially. And so it's refreshing to change.
Yeah. And the more you do it, the easier you can flip that switch.
Mm-hmm.
It's if I just boulder for months and months and then I go try to climb a sport route, it's a shit show because I can't
totally
flip that switch,
Yeah.
But Nate and I have been on the road for a week now, and I sport climbed the day before I hooked up with him, and since we've bouldered and trad climbed, and we've climbed on Vitavoo granite, we've climbed at Lincoln Lake, we've climbed at Lower Chaos.
Awesome.
So it's been really fun switching from rock types and grip types, and I envy that because I grew up in the red, and it's grabbing horizontal sandstone edges forever and ever and ever for the most part. So
yeah, and I think one thing that I always really try and communicate to all levels of climbers, but certainly beginners and certainly like intermediate level climbers, is try to. I had a goal like early on in my climbing that I wanted to climb 514 on all the rock types. And I think that even if that goal is 510 or 511 or whatever, or even if it's just like, hey, every weekend in September, I'm going to climb on a different rock type. And of course, depending on where you live, that can be quite limiting.
Right.
But, in Colorado, it's quite possible. In the West in general, Oregon, Washington, whatever, it's quite possible. I think that's such an incredible way, because the demands of like sandstone versus granite versus, volcanic tuff versus, limestone, they're so different. And the hold types are different. The way it's going to the way it's going to stress your fingers and your arms and whatever. And that, I always suggest that to people is like an awesome kind of way to improve. I think that if people could jump around between rock types and then furthermore bouldering, sport climbing, trad climbing, whatever, if you're into that, like, man, your skill set is gonna be enormous.
Yeah, and I think that's the big takeaway here is follow this sort of interdisciplinary approach that you're advocating. Have big goals in the different disciplines, but constantly switch it up and to take a back seat and learn from people.
Yeah, totally.
I definitely think that's the big takeaway here.
Yeah.
So, man, thanks for sitting down with me, taking some time out.
Yeah, totally.
Good luck on the diamond tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yeah, man.
Thanks. Hopefully it happens.
All right. I'll see you soon, man.
Yeah, thanks, man.
I don't think it's a coincidence that the best climbers out there spend a lot of their time climbing rather than lifting and hangboarding. And like we discussed, there's certainly a time and a reason to systematically train. But if that training doesn't include a lot of climbing, you're either an elite climber already, you don't have time or access to climb, or you're doing it wrong. If you've made it this far, I've got a simple tip for you that Jonathan has really embodied in his climbing. Whether it's training or performing indoors or outdoors, you will do yourself a real favor if you try to cycle between 3 different sessions: climb hard, climb more, and explore. Difficulty, volume, and learning new things. Do those 3 sessions regularly, and you'll get better. I promise. At the blog post for this episode, you'll find more about Jonathan and where you can find him online. You'll also find thousands of articles, training plans, courses, and products that can help you become a better climber. We just completely overhauled the website to make it easier to navigate all of that advice. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Power Company Climbing, but you won't find us on Twitter because we don't tweet, we scream like eagles.
This time, 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 power, this time to build power, this time to build power, this time to build power. Unknown Audio.